dawn of the Great Crusade, the Emperor of Mankind decreed that humanity would never be free to progress and advance to its destined position as the preeminent intelligent species in the galaxy, until the last stone from the last church was cast down onto the last priest. Terra itself had been purged of all its ancient religions and superstitious traditions by the time the Emperor of Mankind began the Great Crusade, and the Emperor himself even went as far as to personally witness the destruction of the final church on Terra's ancient soil, after engaging its caretaker and resident priest, Uriah Olather, in a lengthy verbal debate concerning the pros and cons of religion against the coming of the Imperial Truth of science, logic, and reason. The Imperial Truth that the Emperor began to spread amongst humanity stated that humanity alone was the species which should rightfully rule the galaxy, since its physical form was both the purest, and the other intelligent races, such as the ancient race known as the Eldar, had already tried and failed to maintain galaxy-spanning civilizations, falling to their pride and arrogance. Now, it was mankind's turn to claim their place amongst the stars. As the majority of the intelligent species encountered by mankind, such as the Orcs, Eldar, Leia, amongst others, had either proven to be irrevocably hostile to humanity, or presented a future threat to human dominance and exploitation of the galaxy, as such, large number of Xenos species were exterminated outright if they presented the slightest threat or obstacle to the Imperium, although some would still continue to fight against the Imperium even until this day. The Emperor of Mankind believed that the Imperial Truth needed to be brought to all worlds of humanity, peacefully at first, but imposed by war if necessary, for it was the only way for humanity to survive and prosper in the face of a very hostile universe. If this required the use of brutal force against those who would not accept this decree, then so be it. Just as he had during the wars that took place during the unification of Terra, the Emperor admitted that he regretted the loss of innocent lives and the curtailing of individual freedoms that the fleets of the Great Crusade sometimes trod upon, but he could see no other way to safeguard humanity and simultaneously weaken the endless corruptive power of the Chaos Gods. But could this act of spreading this form of militant atheism, in the Emperor's attempt of weakening the Chaos Gods, in actuality have inadvertently created another god? Within the warp, the very realm of chaos, emotions and ideas are amplified, and if given enough time, these thoughts and beliefs eventually begin to coalesce, and will in time gain a rudimentary consciousness of their own. These masses of energy and emotion will eventually lead to the very creation of the Chaos Gods themselves, the psychic manifestations of the deepest desires and greatest fears of mortals, with each one being a reflection of the mortal passions that formed them. The eldest of the Chaos Gods is Khorne, the Lord of Battle, Hatred, and Blood. Following him came Tzeentch, the god of deception and sorcery, the architect of fate. Soon after him was born Nurgle, the Lord of Decay, Pestilence, and Corruption. And finally came Slaanesh, the very personification of hedonism, pride, and desire. Because of the vast size of the Imperium and the long-held view of the Imperial Truth during the 31st millennium, and that the Emperor himself was spreading amongst his very subjects, could it be possible that these thoughts and emotions would have birthed, or at the very least begin the creation of a fifth Chaos God? Potentially, yes. There does in fact exist a fifth major Chaos God, the Renegade God known as Malao. Malao, more commonly known now as Malice, is a rogue Chaos God known by many titles, such as the Outcast God, the Lost God, and the Renegade God. Malao was the embodiment of Chaos's indiscriminate and anarchic tendency towards destruction, even of itself. Effectively, one could describe Malao as being the Chaos God of Chaos incarnate. Malao's relationship to the other Chaos Gods is antagonistic. While the other Gods of Chaos pursue purposes that are wholly their own, such as plotting schemes or demanding blood from their followers, Malao occupies an almost unique position within the pantheon of the Chaos Gods. Simply put, to disrupt the plans of the Chaos Gods themselves by any means necessary. For the followers of Malao, they will work almost solely upon spilling the blood of other chaotic creatures and worshippers. As such, Malao is both feared and hated by the other Chaos Gods. Much like their master, Malao's worshippers too are loathed by the other followers of the Chaos Gods, and as such they are outcasts, despised by those loyal to and by those who fight against the ruinous powers, leaving them dependent upon their patron god's whims and desires. Few men worship this god, but the most notable of which are the members of the Renegade Space Marine warband known as the Sons of Malice. The Sons of Malice are an extremely brutal and bloodthirsty group of warriors. Disturbingly, the warband itself fights in utter silence, with those who have fought against them stating that the warriors of the Sons of Malice are surrounded by a deeply disturbing aura. The Sons of Malice themselves actively tried to summon Malau, named Malice, into the material realm itself. To do this, they have champions known as Doomed Ones, who actively navigate the Labyrinth, an ancient and tainted ship that has become sacred ground to the warband and a meeting place since the loss of their homeworld. The challenge of the Labyrinth takes place once a century, with only 11 of the Doomed Ones surviving its warp-tainted corridors. These 11 Doomed Ones, 11 also being the sacred number of Malau, were sacrificed to summon Malau into the material realm, so that the Sons of Malice could retake their homeworld. Because of Malau's unique stance to be a Chaos God dedicated to the destruction of the other Chaos Gods, it would appear likely the Emperor's Imperial Truth had in fact created a, for lack of a better term, God of Unbelief. So why isn't Malau's influence felt more within the galaxy as a whole? After the Emperor's interment into the Golden Throne, the Imperium began to adopt the Imperial Creed, a religion which depicts the Emperor of mankind as a god incarnate. Because the majority of the Imperium at large now is a highly religious society, thanks to the presence of organisations such as the Ecclesiarchy and the fanatical persecution of so-called heretics, this would weaken any power a god of unbelief would have, with Malau still existing due to the fact that the nature of his power is now parasitic, rising and falling with the other Chaos Gods. Perhaps this is the only way that Malau can still maintain his existence, leeching off the other ruinous powers. That being said, with Malau having been summoned into the material realm by the Sons of Malice, perhaps he would in fact use a physical avatar to contain his still growing power until he is now powerful enough to fight against the other members of the Pantheon of Dark Gods. Now while Malau may be the very antithesis of chaos, this doesn't necessarily make him a god of atheism or unbelief per se, as he is merely the Chaos God whose sole purpose was to fight against the other gods of chaos. But within the universe of Warhammer Fantasy, prior to its destruction and recreation into the Age of Sigmar, there was a minor Chaos God who could in fact fit the description of a god of unbelief. This Chaos God was named Nakoho. Nakoho was the Chaos God who represented the entire struggle against the notion of gods and religion. However, Nakoho himself never made an appearance within the universe of Warhammer 40,000. But given how there is a strong possibility that the universes between Warhammer 40,000 and Warhammer Fantasy were at the very least at one point in time linked, due to various factors such as the four major Chaos Gods, the Old Ones amongst others, there was nothing stopping the possibility of Nakoho having some kind of minor influence within the universe of Warhammer 40,000. But given how the Warhammer Fantasy universe was completely destroyed, with many of the gods that inhabited it either perishing or evolving into new beings entirely, it's entirely possible that the minor Chaos Gods like Nakoho did not or could not survive or adapt, and thus perished. As such, the closest we would have for a god of unbelief currently within Warhammer 40,000 would in fact be the Renegade God Malau. Thanks for watching.